The fluorescent lights of the hospital parking garage were the color of a bruise, that sick yellow-white that didn't flatter anything or anyone, least of all a woman finishing her third consecutive night shift with dried blood on her sneakers and a granola bar she hadn't had time to eat since Tuesday. Gemma was halfway to her car when the black SUV rolled in from the north entrance and stopped directly in her path. She didn't run. Running was for people who hadn't already lost everything worth protecting. Her brother Joel had been quiet for 6 weeks. That should have told her something. Joel was never quiet. He was loud and desperate, and always burning someone else's money. 6 weeks of silence meant he'd gone too deep, too fast, with people who didn't deal in warnings. The doors opened. 3 men stepped out. They didn't look like debt collectors. Debt collectors wore bad suits and bad cologne and threatened to call your employer. These men wore things that cost more than her annual salary, and they weren't threatening anything. They were simply there, which was worse. The tallest one, silver at his temples, jaw scarred from chin to ear, eyes the color of old concrete, held out a folded piece of paper. He didn't approach her. He waited. She walked over and took it. Joel's handwriting, slanted, rushed, the letters of a man writing while his hands shook. She's good with numbers. She's good with blood. Take her. She'll figure out the terms. The granola bar dropped out of Gemma's coat pocket. She didn't pick it up. How much? She asked. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. The man with the scarred jaw looked at her the way people look at equations they aren't sure are solvable yet. More than you have. Then we have a problem, Gemma said, because threatening me won't generate the money any faster. What do you actually want? His name was Beckett. She'd learned that in the car. She'd learn a lot of things in that car. The compound was 40 minutes north of the city, past the grid where streetlights ran out, and the dark became absolute. Gemma sat in the back seat and catalogued what she knew. 3 organizations, 3 separate debts Joel had run up with each, totaling somewhere north of $800,000 she didn't have and couldn't earn in time. Joel was gone. He hadn't died. Men like Joel didn't die quietly. They just disappeared over state lines and left the collateral behind. She was the collateral. The compound looked like money that had learned to be paranoid. Stone walls, iron gates, cameras mounted to eliminate blind spots. Armed men walked the perimeter with the kind of bored efficiency that meant they'd been doing it long enough not to think about it anymore. The main house was vast and cold, all pale stone and high ceilings, and the kind of silence that pressed against your eardrums. Beckett walked in first. The other 2 followed. Flynn, who was built like a truck, and looked at Gemma the way you look at a complication you didn't ask for, and Aldous, who was older than the others by a decade, and moved with the deliberate ease of a man who had never once in his life been made to hurry. They gathered in the center of the foyer, and spoke about her like she was furniture they'd ordered, without quite remembering why. "She's a nurse," Flynn said, as though that explained something disappointing. Gemma corrected from the doorway. 7 years. I can start 2 IVs simultaneously in the dark. I can read an EKG faster than most cardiologists. I once kept a man alive for 40 minutes on a sidewalk with a belt tourniquet and a prayer. She crossed her arms. So before you decide I'm useless, decide first what you actually need. All 3 looked at her. Aldous smiled. It was the smile of a man who had collected rare and dangerous things his whole life and had just spotted something new. "She'll do," he said simply, and walked toward the stairs. Flynn looked at Beckett. Beckett was still watching Gemma with that evaluating stillness, not hostile, not warm, just calculating. Like he was revising an estimate upward and wasn't entirely pleased about it. "You'll be housed in the East Wing," Beckett said. "You won't leave the property. You'll see to any medical needs that arise on the compound. In exchange, the principal of your brother's debt decreases by a fixed amount each month. When it reaches 0, you leave. And if something arises that I can't treat without a hospital, then we'll discuss it. I need to discuss it now. I need a list of everyone on this property. Existing conditions, current medications, allergies. I need a properly stocked medical bay, not a first aid kit, and I need the debt reduction terms in writing, tonight." Flynn let out a short, disbelieving sound. "She's negotiating." Gemma said, "Is that a problem?" Beckett's jaw tightened. Something shifted behind his eyes, not anger. Something quieter, more reluctant. Interest. "Get her what she needs," he said to no one in particular, and walked away. The medical bay was better than she'd expected. Someone had furnished it for actual emergencies. Surgical lights, a crash cart, a proper autoclave. She spent her first night inventorying every cabinet, making handwritten lists, flagging what was expired. It was the kind of work that kept her hands busy so her mind could process the rest. Joel, her brother, 6 weeks of silence and then a piece of paper in Beckett's hand. She had been cleaning up Joel's messes since she was 19 years old. She was 28 now, and she was tired in a way that sleep didn't fix anymore. Beckett came to the medical bay on the 3rd day. He stood in the doorway long enough that she caught him in her peripheral vision before she acknowledged him. "You reorganized the crash cart," he said. The defibrillator pads were expired. Whoever stocked this hadn't checked anything in 8 months. She didn't look up from the chart she was building. "You're on a blood pressure medication you haven't refilled in 6 weeks. A pause. "How did you know that?" "Your diastolic is elevated. I checked it when you came in on day 1. You thought I was taking a pulse." She capped her pen. "Who prescribes for you?" "A doctor in the city." "Does he know everything you're taking?" Silence, no. "Then you're going to give me a complete list of every supplement, medication, and substance you put in your body, or I can't help you, and based on your numbers, you're going to need help within the next few months." She finally looked up. "That's not a threat. That's a clinical fact." Beckett leaned against the doorframe. The scar along his jaw caught the light. Old damage, the kind that had been there so long it had become geography. "You speak to everyone like this?" "I speak to patients like this. Is that what you are?" He pulled a chair from the corner and sat down. "Ask your questions." She did. For 40 minutes she asked and he answered, and she wrote everything down, and he watched her write with an expression she couldn't quite categorize. Not the open hostility Flynn had shown her, something quieter, like a man who hadn't been listened to in a long time and wasn't sure what to do with the experience. When she finished, she said, "I'll adjust your protocol and manage it from here. You won't need the city doctor." "And that benefits you how?" Gemma met his eyes, grey-green, the color of the sea in winter. "Because if you die on my watch, Flynn will probably blame me, and I have enough problems." The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, something adjacent to one. He stood and buttoned his jacket and walked to the door. "Beckett," she said. He stopped. "Deduct 2,000 from the principal for the consultation." A beat, done, he left. She exhaled. Flynn came in on a Thursday at 2 in the morning, the way dangerous men always did. Half-wrecked and bleeding and acting like neither thing was happening. He'd been in a fight, not the managed kind. The kind where someone had gotten lucky with a broken bottle and opened a gash along his left side that needed stitches now, not tomorrow. He stood in her doorway, dripping on the tile, gripping the frame with one bloody hand like he expected her to tell him to leave. "Sit down," Gemma said. "I don't need." 7 stitches and a tetanus booster, and you need to sit down before you fall down. Sit. He sat. He was enormous, up close, arms corded with muscle and tattooed from wrist to collarbone, watching her with an expression that was trying very hard to be hostile and not quite getting there. She'd seen it before, the look of someone who hadn't been cared for enough times to know how to accept it without fighting it first. She worked quietly, cleaning the wound, numbing the area, placing each suture with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 10,000 times and was still paying attention. Flynn stared at the wall. "You didn't have to come to me," she said, tying off the 4th stitch. "The regular medic is out. You're what we've got." "I meant you could have waited until morning." A pause. "It was bleeding." "Yes," she said, "it was." 5th stitch. 6th. She could feel him watching her now, the hostility draining out of his posture, replaced by something she recognized. The involuntary relaxation that happened when the pain started to ebb, the body remembering what it felt like not to be alone with its damage. "Why aren't you trying to run?" Flynn asked. It came out almost like an accusation. "Because I'm not finished," Gemma said. 7th. She tied off the last suture. "And because out there I have nothing to go back to. Joel burned that when he put my name on the table. Whatever I'm building now, I'm building it here." Flynn was quiet for a long moment. "He really just left you." "He really just left me." He exhaled slowly through his nose. "I'll walk you back, it's late." She didn't argue. She cleaned up and let him walk beside her through the quiet compound, and she noticed he stayed between her and the shadows the whole way, and she decided not to mention it. The poisoning took her 11 days to find. She hadn't been looking for it. She'd been reviewing Beckett's blood work. She'd insisted on a basic panel at the end of week 2, framing it as routine, when the liver enzyme numbers came back wrong. Not dramatically wrong. Wrong in the way that required context and comparison, and the kind of attention most people wouldn't have given to a healthy man in his early 40s, with no outward symptoms. She pulled his medication records. She checked the timeline. She ran the panel twice. Someone was introducing a hepatotoxic compound into his supplement regimen. Small doses, cumulative damage. Slow enough that by the time symptoms appeared, the cause would be nearly impossible to trace. Gemma sat with the results for 10 minutes before she moved. The list of people with access to Beckett's personal kitchen was short. The list of people who wanted him impaired, but not visibly dead, was shorter. She thought about the supply chain for the last supplement shipment. Who had handled it? Who stood to gain from Beckett, being gradually hollowed out without it looking like a move? She had a name by the time he walked past the medical bay door. "Stop," she said. He stopped. She showed him the blood work. She walked him through every number, the enzyme elevation, the timeline, the projection for what would have occurred if it had continued untreated another 3 months. Beckett listened to all of it without speaking. His face stayed completely still. The scar at his jaw went pale. "Who?" he said. He meant on the comp. She gave him the name. He looked at her for a long time, long enough that she felt the weight of what she'd just handed him. "You could have waited," he said finally. "Used this." "I'm not interested in leverage," Gemma said. "I'm interested in the debt being paid and walking out of here eventually. You die, the terms die with you. Simple math." Something moved through his expression that wasn't simple at all. Slower than calculation. Quitter. "What do you want?" he asked. Not like the first night, a real question from a man who wasn't used to asking them. "The debt halved, for the diagnosis," she held his gaze, "and a proper laboratory budget. If I'm your only medical resource, I need to actually be resourced." "Done," Beckett said, and then quietly, "Thank you, Gemma." It was the first time he'd used her name. She looked down at the blood work so he wouldn't see her face. "Don't thank me. Just stay on the adjusted protocol." Joel came on a Sunday 2 months later. She was in the garden when the gate alarm sounded, and Flynn materialized at her shoulder before she'd fully registered the noise. She didn't need to ask who it was. They brought him to the courtyard. He looked like those 2 months had passed him through something grinding. Gaunt, shaking, the particular grey pallor of a man not sleeping well because sleep required a quiet conscience. He saw Gemma and his eyes went wide. "Gem," he said, "thank God. Gem, I have a contact. I can get the money this time. I just need you to vouch for me. Tell them I'm good. I swear I." "Stop," Gemma said. He stopped. She walked down the stone steps. She stood in front of her brother and looked at him the way she looked at patients. Not to judge, just to assess. "You're using again," she said. "Whatever you were on when you signed my name to 3 separate organizations, you went straight back to it." I was scared. "You were always scared, Joel. Fear didn't make you gamble our rent money for 6 years. Fear didn't make you disappear when the men came. Fear didn't make you write a note that said, "Take her. She'll figure it out." Her voice didn't waver. She was done wavering. "I have been figuring out your things since I was 19 years old. I am finished." Joel's face crumpled. "I'm your brother." "You are," she said, "and I love you. That part won't change. But this is mine now. I built something here. I'm not your margin anymore." Behind her she heard Beckett's footsteps on the stone. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. "The debt is cleared," she told Joel. "Not by you. By me. You don't owe these men anything." Joel blinked. "How?" "I worked." She held his gaze one last time. "Go somewhere and get clean. Don't come back here and don't use my name again. Go." He went. She stood in the open courtyard and listened to the gate close behind him. The silence that followed was different from her first night, less cold, less like something pressing against her eardrums, more like space. Beckett stopped beside her. Flynn was to her left, Aldous somewhere behind her, quiet and comprehensive as always. "The blood work schedule needs to be quarterly, not annual," Gemma said, to no one specifically. "And I want to expand the medical bay. If people are coming home at 2 a.m. bleeding, you need a proper operating suite." "That's a significant expenditure," Beckett said. "Consider it an investment in your assets." She glanced at him sideways. "Your words." He reached into his jacket and held out a folded document. She took it. Contract. Her name, a salary, not a debt reduction. A title, Pandical Director, Compound Operations. Not a hostage, not collateral, not even an employee exactly. Something else. "You drafted this before today," she said. "After the blood work," Beckett said. "I was waiting for the right moment." "You were waiting to see if I'd run." He didn't deny it. "You didn't." Gemma folded the contract and put it in her pocket. She looked out past the iron gates at the road that ran north through the dark and connected eventually to the city, where she'd spent 7 years keeping people alive under fluorescent lights for a salary that never quite covered what her brother took. Then she turned back. Beckett held the door. She walked through it. She hadn't come here to survive. She hadn't come here to win. But she'd done both anyway, the way people do when they've spent enough years with nothing. They learn to build something out of whatever the wreckage leaves behind. The door closed. The woman who cleaned up her brother's messes was gone. The one who signed her own name to things, she was just getting started.